Hey everybody, this is Lauren Stein at Acctivate. We're going to shake things up a little bit with our webinars. Today's webinar is being presented by Michelle Barr, the owner of Firefly Business Group. Firefly has worked with Acctivate for many years, and in that time they've developed applications to streamline processes both inside and outside of Acctivate. On top of application development, they also work one-on-one with Acctivate customers to assist with training or operational procedure improvement, as well as reports. So we'll be getting a view of their Pro Data Export utility today, and I will go ahead and let Michelle take it away.
Great, thank you so much, Lauren. Hi everyone, this is Michelle Barr with Firefly Business Group. Our company, as Lauren mentioned, is a full-service consulting group that provides assistance over and above support on the Acctivate software. I personally was a prior employee of the Acctivate management team and have been working with the Acctivate software since 2003. I appreciate your time today and would like to review our Firefly Pro Data Export utility, which was designed to give more flexibility to Acctivate customers to utilize the data in their system. This utility will allow you to select any data within the Acctivate database and easily export it to Excel. It is much easier to use this than the traditional Microsoft Excel query tool, and it does not require you to give users this company SQL password, which gives full access to your database. The utility is read-only, and access is controlled by knowledge of the admin password, which is provided to you with purchase. It does allow easy access, easy simple selection of database fields, which we'll show you in our demonstration today. It also allows you to create your own custom queries with parameters, which we will also demonstrate today. Or you can utilize the Firefly support team and they'll create queries for you, and those will be imported into your system. So let's go into the demo and open up Firefly Pro. So this is a utility that is saved on a desktop, and you can put it on whatever desktops that you want within your organization. It is designed to talk to the SQL Server. So when you first install it, there's not an installation program, but yet what it does is we just put it on the desktop, we configure it, and tell it the SQL Server credentials to be able to talk to the Acctivate database. It's not necessarily talking to the software, but it's talking to the Acctivate database that's running on your server. So with that said, we have to be on the network to be able to utilize the utility. The utility itself comes with 5 default profiles, and that would be the customer contact list, which is going to list all of the contacts on your customer screen, the customer email list, customer information list, customer ship to list. So let me just kind of go through that. So the customer information list is going to be a listing of all the customers that you set up on the screen. The ship to list is going to be everything that's going to be on the ship to tab. The contact list is everything that's going to be set up in the contacts tab, where the email list is going to be pulling emails from each of the tabs that are set up. And then finally, we have a product attribute list, which is basically just all the information that you're setting up on your product screen. It will also include custom fields that you may set up as well. So let me just kind of walk through how it works. I'm going to preview that. And I could preview it right into the screen, and or I could just take it and run it and export it to Excel. There we go. And boom, there's all my data into Excel, that easy. These profiles are predefined based on how we set them up, but yet they're editable for you to manage that. To edit these profiles and or to add your own profiles, you would log in with admin mode. The admin mode is a password that we will give you upon purchase, and you can decide which employees have admin mode and do not. Now, if I want to edit this customer information list, what I would do is can hit the edit button. This will edit the customer information list for this one install of the utility. And you'll see that when I edit this, it is a query, a SQL query that's already written. Now, I'm going to show you an easier way. So this can be a little overwhelming for some people. Some people may just be following right along and be excited about it. So, but what I'm going to show you is a simple edit to this one query. And then we're going to show you another way. There's multiple ways we could pull information with this utility. So to do this one query and change it, so the last field is it's just listing the different fields within the customer table. So we have the mobile phone number, and then the next thing we're going to add is I'm going to put a comma, price code, and we're going to do status as two different fields. Now, obviously, I know the field. I've been working with Acctivate a long time, and you'll learn the fields as well. And then as I show you this next part of the demonstration, we're going to show you where the field listings are to kind of help you learn as well. So one of the things that this is saying right here is where status equals 1. So the default query is telling me that a 1 in Acctivate means active customers only. And I want to remove that because I want to see all customers, whether they're active or not, which is why I put status here. Okay, I can always hit this test button down here to the right where I can test the query and make sure everything comes out without a problem. And if there's no errors, it's going to go ahead and show me that. So I can scroll to the right and see that I now have price code and I have status as columns here. I'm going to hit save and then show you by closing out of the utility and just coming right back in that it saved my results. I didn't have to close out. I'm just trying to demonstrate. Now the price code and status is part of that. If at any point in time you've decided that you want to go back to the standard, you don't like how it works, you can always come into admin mode. And you could delete that query. This is the default profiles that came with the tool when you purchased it. And then come back in and it will re-add it the way the original default was. Okay, now let's go in and do a simple query that you could start on your own. So once again, let me go back into admin mode. Okay, and I'm going to start a new query. And it wants a name, so we're going to call this one price list. And we'll just call it, well, I might spell it correctly. Okay, we'll just call this price list on products. Doesn't really matter. Now we'll come into the search box. This is all of your Acctivate views, which is to some people it's important to know. There's a difference between tables and views when we're working with the database, and we've limited this to only show us the views. Views are much more helpful when it comes to doing queries and reporting, and so we didn't want to make it confusing. This is showing a underscore contact last order date because that's a custom view that I've written in my system. So if you have any custom views that are in your system or that you've had us help you write, or possibly Acctivate support team on implementation, then it would show those as well. If you don't know the view names, then you can look them up. There's actually an article within Acctivate, and I meant to have that open today, but I didn't. So possibly Lauren can maybe post that out to the group to show you the view names. And we also have our code list names, but it might be some good information to show everybody. The search button within here, or if you want to send me a link, Lauren, I can certainly open them here. The search name is, the search box is going to allow me to type what I think I want to find, right? So I want to find maybe price, or I want to find product. And it's going to allow me to see everything that has product in there. So there's a lot of things in there, but if I go ahead and type price, then I say, well, I have price code, which that's going to be the list that we set up a configuration to establish our price codes. Or we have product price, which is actually the view of where they are. And Lauren sent me a link, thank you. So this is the link within the help site within Acctivate that shows us all our view names and the description of what they are, as well as the location, the screen location within Acctivate. So it kind of helps you understand exactly where we're seeing all this information to be coming from. Okay, back to the product price table. We want to be able to go ahead and select 4 fields. I don't need all of them. By default, they're all selected. And so you can see what's in the right, what exactly is selected. So I'm going to uncheck this and then select which fields I want. So I want to be able to select my product ID. I want to select my price code, and then these are alphabetical, which if you've worked with the tables enough, then you would appreciate my decision to make these alphabetical. Price type, and then price. So these are the 4 that I want to use. Now, right now, it's putting it in here alphabetical. So what I want to do is I might throw in here where I'm going to add in a search order, or an order of, not search, but how I want to arrange them. And I want to put my product ID first. And let's say I want to add my price code second. Okay, so if I hit save, and then I run this, and I can be in admin mode or be in, actually that didn't organize that, why? Let me go in, let me edit it. Oh, this is just telling me how it's ascending, descending. My apologies. I'm going to reposition that to product ID and reposition price code. So within the product ID itself, I apologize, it's saying that this is an ascending versus a descending sort order within that. So if I close out, this is now on the list. Once again, I didn't have to close out, but I want to show you that it's now a custom profile within the list, and that you can share with the other users in your organization if you'd like, and we'll cover that in a little bit. So if I preview the results, my product ID column is first, it's in ascending order, and then my price code is second, and then the different types of pricing within that product itself. You can almost see this one has probably volume pricing, why there's 2 different prices on it, or maybe different unit of measure pricing. So you could add those additional columns if that was helpful for you to see that in your data set. So it's a very simple query tool. It's just one table. It's only going to allow you to grab data from one table by checking each of the boxes. And I'll go back in so you can see that. So if I wanted to edit this query, then it takes me right back to where I was, and I can add an additional box if I'd like, right? So I could just continue to organize my data in here, take away columns. Let's say I don't care for price type. I can uncheck that, save it, and then that's all part of my query. And as I mentioned, you could share these queries with other users. This is all configured for your instance, your desktop instance. So if I wanted to share the price list with another user, I'll show you how to export that, and they can import it, but they can have their own price list changes that wouldn't impact yours. Next, what I'm going to do is a custom query. And I'm going to grab this that Lauren provided because it will help me in the custom query. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. So I'm going to do a new query. I'm already in admin mode. No sense of close and reopen. And this one is going to be called order list. And it's my sales order list, whatever you want to call it. And you could put whatever description you want in here, and I'll show you where that is going to show. And it could be, open orders only, any other kind of information that may help you remember exactly what you've done. So in the custom query, we're going to go off of the query builder. And so I'm going to say we're going to go a little rogue because you have to know the tables a little bit or the views, and you have to know SQL. Now, how do you learn SQL? I've already been hit up with that in the last week. And there are great books out there to learn SQL, and there's also Google. And it's not difficult. It can get extremely difficult, but for the basic SQL and what we're doing, it's actually not too bad. It's a very useful language, and it uses words that we understand, so it's not necessarily something too difficult for you to follow along. So we're going to type the word select. Select is the word that's going to say go find data. Okay, and that's pretty much what this Pro Data does. It's just a select data. It's not going to update our data. As I told you in the beginning, it's read only. It's not going to write back and change our data. It's just selecting data from the database so we can see it. So you're always going to start with select. So we want to select order number, because that's in my orders table. Select customer ID and order date. And then we put order date, and we put commas in between. And then where do we want to select that from? You can type, a lot of people who type in SQL, they type capitals. You don't have to type capitals. It just helps see the words better. It would work just as fine in lowercase, so it's not case sensitive. You could put it on the first line. You can bring it down to the second line. It's more of just a visual organization of how it helps you see your data and your query to help you work. So we're going to select it from orders. So orders is the sales order table now, or view, I'm sorry. So if you come back to the help article and you type in your search criteria, report views, then you should be able to find this. So if I came down here and I was looking for, this is all, if I hit Control F, I could type sales order, right? And so it's just a web selection. Now that's a whole lot of, there's 12 matches, but you can go through and find it. And you will find, if I jump down to orders, so order detail is going to be the sales order details, and then orders is pretty much our sales order screen. Okay? Okay, so when we're doing so let's test this, make sure it works. Okay, we have a nice number of orders, but we probably have a bunch of old stuff that we don't want. So what this is going to do is also include all sales orders, canceled, completed. So that list is a little big. So what we do in our query is we want to put in what's called a where clause. What I want to do, now I could just put in where order status equals S for scheduled, or in scheduled and back ordered. I could do it that way. Or what I want to show you in the utility is we have parameters. So parameters, what it does is it creates a question in the query that allows you to ask every time you run the query. It's going to ask you a question and you put in the answer. So there's a couple ways we could do this. So right now I'm going to show you how in Pro Data, how we add a parameter. So we're going to hit add a parameter, and it says, well, what do you want to call this parameter? So we're going to call it order status. The parameter name probably shouldn't have spaces, but the display name certainly can. So that's why I'm going to do it twice. What type of status is it? So is it a string, which means text? Is it a decimal, like a dollar amount? Is it an integer? That's an INT. That's usually like a quantity field. Is it a date time, date? And then Boolean. Boolean is a checkbox. So that's a yes, no checkbox. And in this case, we're looking for a string. All of this stuff is on Google or in your SQL book as well, but hopefully I'm maybe answering some questions for you as I go along. So I don't have a min and max link on this. And my description is I'm going to select it from the query. So selecting it from a query is kind of like we're already writing a query back on our query tab, but we're adding another query to get, so it's called a subquery. We're getting a query to get just the different options of the order status letters. And so here I'm going to say select order status from orders, group by order status. So just to kind of break it out for you, select is a common SQL term, and so is group by. And so what that does is if I didn't do the group by, if I just said select order status from orders, what it would do is it would give me this very long list, B, 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 K, K, S, K, B, and it would give me everything. The group by, what it does is it tells me, just give me one distinct letter for each one. So I'm grabbing it from the order status. I'm getting every status that my data uses. If I'm a company that doesn't use quotes or doesn't use booked orders, then I'm not going to see those letters. But for companies that do, it'll show that. And so since this is the demo data, if I hit test, you'll see those letters. I'm going to assume, I'm going to cut this out. I haven't tested this yet, but let me just test it out. Yeah, see, this is what it would do if you didn't have the group by. That's every single thing repeated. And what the group by does is it consolidates it and only shows us one of each. Okay, so we're going to save that. I don't want to close. Oh, and I said that and I closed. So let me go back in and I want to edit that because I want to go back to my query text and I want to throw in a where, what's called a where clause. And I want to say select the order number, customer ID, and order date from orders where order status equals, and then you'll see that parameter that I created is now on the screen. If I just click it, then it knows go grab that other query for my order status. So let's save it. And you will see we have the query for C is completed, K is for back ordered. Oh, how does Michelle know all that? Well, Miss Lauren provided us the link to another Acctivate help file called code list. So if you type in your search query, you should be able to see it as code list. And what that does is it gives us, let me see if I can make this just a tiny bit bigger. What that does is it gives us the listing. Let's try 125. There we go. Wow, great that we can see it. So this gives us all the codes that Acctivate uses in the background on some of the tables. And if we go down to, we have sales order type, which that's a little bit different. That's whether it's a credit memo or quote. But down here, we have sales order status, which is B for booked, S for scheduled, K for back ordered, C for completed, X for canceled, and it's also missing one, which is Q for quote. We do have quotes down here. We have 3 more statuses, but within the Acctivate database, the sales orders and the quotes all share the same table/view. And so you may see all of this in the same listing, but just so you can know what those codes are. So how this works in Pro Data is if I want to see just my quotes, this time I preview the results and I have 10 quotes in the system. If I want to see scheduled orders, I should find a lot more. So that's how you would write a custom query and how you can use the parameters to help you with that custom query. Let me now go and show you how I can change this to add in a second table. Second tables are a little bit more complex, but you're going to get there and you're going to have that question. So I'm going to try to go through this. This webinar is being recorded. You can come back and watch it later. Google is your friend, as well as SQL books out there. The SQL books itself kind of teach you starting from a different point of view, and eventually you get to where the meat of it is and where you start understanding it. But this is kind of SQL with Acctivate, right? We just want our tables, et cetera. So it's all really good and will help you with this. You can't hurt anything. It's read only. Don't forget about that. So what I want to do is add in my order detail table. So I'm going to put in product ID, and I want to put in, let me look at my notes. I think it's quantity scheduled. Okay. And then I have to tell it, well, what's my other table? So in here, I'm going to say left join. So I'm joining a table. So there's a couple different, if I could type it right, there's a couple different kind of joins that you'll learn in the SQL books or on Google. There's an inner join, a left join, a right join, and I'm almost positive there's an outer join. 98% of the time, left join is perfect. You can do an inner join here that just means that I want to grab everything that there is. If there is a detail record, and there must be an order record. So inner join means there must be one thing on each side. A left join says you must have an order, but you may or may not have details. So the inner join will restrict it. If I have an order that started with no details, an inner join will restrict it and only give my orders with details. A left will still give me orders, but you'll see we would have an empty product ID. So a left is typically safe unless you're really trying hard to exclude things. And that's when you would use the inner join. And this is the same kind of thing when we start getting into designing crystal reports and other situations. So I wanted to left join the order detail view on. So it's asking me what fields in the order table am I joining to in the order detail. Now, you can probably do order number, but usually when we do things when we're back in the database, there's things called GUIDs. A GUID is a unique ID. And so I have a unique ID called GUID order in my order table. And it's a string of, I think 16, 20 characters that's random. But the table knows about it. It understands it. So that's why this starts to get a little tricky. And I won't stay long on this subject to keep all of you with me, but we have more good stuff coming up. But let me just type this out right. So orders.GUID order equals on the order detail.GUID order. So what I'm saying is the GUID order field in my orders table is the same match. We find a match in the order detail on that same field. So I'm joining based on those two fields aligning and to give me the right records. So I'm going to test this, and I'm going to get an error. And the reason I'm getting an error is ambiguous column name. What that means is the order number can be found in both the orders and the order detail table. So it wants my records to be unique. And so you'll learn in your SQL books that you need to decide, well, which table should my order number come from? Now, technically, a lot of the books is going to tell you that you're going to put in orders in front of each one of these fields. And then on product and quantity scheduled, those would come from the order detail. And then it's a period in between. So table name, period, field name. But Michelle Barr is going to tell you, I only really needed it on the order number because it's the only name that's in both tables. And I apologize, I use the word table a lot. Table and views in this exercise is kind of the same thing. It's where the data is stored and read. So technically, I only needed orders just on our first field, but just to show you how that would look if you like to have everything all nicely spelled out. I don't have any order errors right now. So I'm just going to test it. Let's see, I don't want completed. Maybe I want canceled. Test that. and I have results. And so from this order, this customer, here's the order date, product, quantity, scheduled. And you'll see that the order number here, 1489T, repeated itself because it must have 5 lines on it. And so just to kind of show you and Activate, if I bring up a 1489T, then you could see there's 6, 7 lines. I can't count that fast over here, but we're probably getting that. It doesn't have shipping. It could be somewhere else down the list too, but there could be some kind of restriction because it is a product in the system, so it should have a GUID, but we'll just kind of walk away from that right now. Okay, so that's how you would do a custom query joining 2 tables. All right, so I've lost some of you, but that's okay. Some of you are like, that was awesome, Michelle. And we'll just go with that. Now, I've written these queries and I want to share them with the other users. When I started this, I said you could purchase this product and you can install it on your computer, and then you can decide, oh, well, I want to go ahead and install it on this other person who works in my organization, their computer as well. Well, when you first install it, they would only get the 5 profiles. But you can share these queries. So how I would do it is I would export it. And what it creates is an FFPD file. And so you can see where I exported mine last time. And FFPD stands for Firefly Pro Data. It's our own file name. We're famous. And then you export it. And then you go over to the other machine. You take this FFPD file, go over to the machine of the other user, and then you can import it into theirs. Such as I have this open POs. Now you don't have to be an admin to do that. Let me close it and open it again. It's right here off the menu where I can import and export. So we exported, now let's import. And it sees all these files on the desktop. And I want to do my open PO one. And boom. This happens to be one I created. It has a parameter date to give me all open purchase orders through a certain date, and I can run that. It ran successfully, but there's no records, and that's okay too. It just means I need to move my date out. So if I'm just for curiosity, 012319. Oops, probably better use my calendar. And I should get my open POs. Boom, pretty easy. Any and every one of these, I can hit the run and export to Excel as I showed in the beginning. Okay, so I showed you how that we can import and export queries written from one product data to another, utility to another. I talked to you about how we can copy the program to either any workstation that we want. And there's no additional charge. I'm going to get to the pricing at the end of the webinar, and it's a one charge for the utility, no matter how many users you have on it. Also, on many circumstances, I wanted to let you know that we at Firefly, who write a lot of custom reports for companies out there, have found that we can write a query faster than we can write a report. When the requirement starts with, I want this data exported to Excel. I hear that day in and day out. Everybody wants to play in Excel, which is kind of part of the reason for the design of this utility. But I will tell you, some things are better as a query and some things are better as a report. So it may not necessarily be the end-all be-all answer that you will never have to have a custom report again. Crystal Reports does have a lot of logic capabilities that we use when we're designing reports that we can't do within a query. But if you ask us, if you already have the utility and say, hey, I want this as a query, we either say yes or no, we need to do that as a report. But there's a lot of things that we can do with the query. It's designed for those data dumps. We're just trying to get data out of tables, sometimes combining a couple tables, sometimes with a little extra logic and then throwing it into Excel. So I just want to let you know that it can save you money if we are doing it as a query in some cases. Now, another feature of ProData is it can do a stored procedure. So I'm going to kind of, you have a very big scary sentence on the screen which talks about what a store procedure is. It's a function that allows us to build advanced solutions for customers to process and return data to Excel while the user provides input and as to what they need processed. You're still probably wondering, what is she saying? What does that mean? And it's something that it's kind of a programming capability where we can do some really cool stuff. And we've done some really cool advanced stuff for customers. And I'll have to try to put together a list of some of the projects that we've been doing for some of our customers. But we have designed, and I plan to continue to design, things that we can do with stored procedures as plugins to ProData. So let me show you one plugin that we're going to demonstrate next is the cycle count plugin. And what it does is it determines the items that need to be counted based on transaction volume. So the cycle, this version of the cycle count, I plan to have more, but what it will do is based on transaction quantity. And let me show you this next bullet point, and I'll kind of go into it a little bit more, but the transaction quantity, every time, how we've had this set up is every time we see the quantity of an item move 30 units or greater, then put it into the cycle count. When we install this for you, we can change that 30 to be a 10 or 50, it depends on your volume, but that's how this first plugin is introducing is going to work. It's going to provide a list of the products to meet the criteria and allow you to export it with some additional information, such as quantity on hand, quantity schedule, quantity on assemblies, which is important, and then the last count date. And then it's also going to mark the products as ready for a cycle count. So I'm going to go through a demonstration how that works. I'm going to roll right out of that plugin and show you the next plugin, which is Material Requirements Planning, which is often referred to as MRP in some other systems. And what the MRP module is going to do is it's going to look at all of the lower level raw material requirements, but based on sales order demand. So this is something that Acctivate can't do right now. It's pretty complex. Putting this store procedure together was very complex, a lot of testing, a lot of things going on behind the scenes, but it's a nice capability for the customers who do use assemblies. I'm going to get out of that and move on to the demonstration of the cycle count. I'm going to open up ProData. And I didn't have cycle count on the list yet because I wanted to make sure that you understood it does not come with utility. It is an additional plugin that can be purchased if you want it. If you don't want it, then you don't have to purchase it. Okay. So as I mentioned, here's the description, by the way. We had talked about the description when we were typing and setting up a query. Where the description is could leave you little carrots as to what you want to remember about it. So it's based on if the product has been counted before, what its last count is, and the transaction activity. So it will go through and it will decide based on the things that haven't been counted recently and also meet the criteria. And this first, in our release, is 30 transaction quantity or greater. It will allow you to pick your warehouse. Which warehouse are we going to count? So I'm just going to stick with D. And I have a demo database, so I have very limited data. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I want to do just 5 items today. Cycle counts are intended to not be your year-end count. You're supposed to count all year long. And so let me preview my results. But do remember, this is outside of Acctivate. So this is not freezing the count. This is not doing anything but telling me what I need to do to go count next. We're still utilizing Acctivate. What just happened when I hit preview results is it not just gave me a list. Remember, I said it's a store procedure. It's not a query. So what did that just do? That went into the products. And if I pull up T18 and I look in my cycle count box, it put the letter CC. So it did 3 things. The first thing it did in the store procedure is it went and cleared every item and made the cycle count empty. So realize that if you already have cycle count set up in your company, then we might need to talk about how that impacts you to know that this is going to clear this box for you. If you don't have cycle counts and this is something new and exciting, then it's pretty easy transition. So what that does is it clears the box, and it only put the CC on these 5 products as it ran the start procedure. So it does do an update back to the Acctivate database. If I did a B10 product, I should not have anything in my cycle count box. So now what do I do with that? Well, now when I'm ready, realize this is the process that freezes the inventory. And when I say freeze, what Acctivate is doing is it's making a copy in the back end of the database of these products that I'm going to select in this list, and it's putting them into a table, and it says this is the quantity at this moment in time. So we're going to put in a CC here saying this is the group I want to do right now. And when you get this warning right here, this warning is pretty darn important. This warning is telling you that you want to make sure that you do not do any kind of movements. You want to print this count sheet at the very end of the day is what this is saying. Print your count sheet, do all your normal process within Acctivate, do your enter count. It's going to just be these 5 products. You put them in here. I'm going to say 1,000 for the first one. Everything is standard Acctivate at this point. We are no longer using the utility. We are 100% standard Acctivate. I'm counting these products. I'm following Acctivate procedures, and I'm going to post. Okay? So why did I go through and post that? Because I want you to see that next time I run this utility, and let's say I do 10, it's going to give me what's next. Those 5 items are not on this count sheet. And if I can make this screen a little bit bigger, it's going to show me that there's a quantity of 9 there, but that's okay. I'm not going to fuss with it. Now, if I go into a sales order, and before I count these, because it's based on the count date, and I do a new count, and I do a new customer, or not a new customer, add a customer to my order. And I want to go sell the the F100 product. And I want to sell 45 units of that product for the D warehouse. And I create that invoice. Because that quantity of 45 is greater than the 30, which is my benchmark, if I hit this, it now adds that to, right here, the F100, adds it to my count again. So it's only going to include anything greater than 30 in transaction. When a transaction, it's sales plus component usage of assemblies or kits, and it's grabbing those 2 transaction types, and it decides that it needs to be counted again and thrown in the count. If it's less than 30, it's not going to show up. It's strictly based on, last counted and then the quantity. So that's our cycle count program. I think it'd be really helpful for a lot of customers. I'm going to whiz through the material requirements planning real quick and show you that. Won't take long, and then we'll wrap this up. So I'm going to import the MRP and the MRP module. So this is based on, as I mentioned, this is based on, it reads the inventory demand of the finished good for the sales order, and it determines the quantity needed for each component. So this is your purchasing requirements list. So let's just make sure you understand that. The way Acctivate works by design, it will do this for you, but only if you start an assembly and start an assembly to say, I'm going to build these. Then it explodes the lower level component requirements for you to purchase. What this is doing is it's not requiring the assembly to be started. It's doing it 100% from the sales order. And so that's why it's asking me sales order questions. It's asking me if I want to, through what shipment date of my sales order, do I want to include booked orders or not? Okay, So I'm going to show you a quick product. So table natural, work table. And this, we have a back order of 100. And let me show you, it does have a leg and a top. And I have one sales order. And so let me back this up to, let's say, November 1st and preview, and it's going to show nothing. And the reason why it shows nothing is because I have a requested ship date of 12/20. So now if I move this forward to Christmas and preview, then I now see the requirements for that order. Now you can see it ordered 100, but why do I have 500 and 250? This is my quantity on hand, demand not in WIP. It is going to tell me demand not in WIP versus quantity in WIP. Quantity in WIP is going to be based on if I have an assembly started. So it's going to subtract, this is all sales orders only, and this is quantity that's in WIP, any additional orders, and the net available that I need to end up purchasing. Okay, so now if I went ahead and I created an assembly, for the table natural, for 10, and I hit save. Oops, I thought I hit. And hit save, and then I refresh over here, then you're going to see that this demand not in WIP and these quantity in WIP changes, okay? The other thing I want to show you real quick, that if I created a new sales order, and oh, Flash Gordon, I never noticed that before, that's pretty funny. And I want to sell the table black. And I want to make this a booked order for the D warehouse, and I want to order 75, and I hit save and refresh this. Run it through the data, so we're at 1:30, so we're safe with that day. It shouldn't show any difference. If I run it through, I want to see any shipments that's happening through the 5th of February. I don't see any difference, but that's because I made it a booked order. Do I want to include booked orders? Yes. Now, not only did it add my black paint, but it also increased these requirements. So it's going to consolidate the requirements. So any of these queries, stored procedures, anything I'm showing you, we can run and export to Excel. And then we can use maybe some of Acctivate or some of Firefly's other utilities. We do have a purchase order import utility, and on the inventory count, we also have a import count utility. So we have lots of cool stuff. So what do we charge for this stuff? So the Firefly Pro Data Export utility is $500. Like I said, this is for as many machines as you want to put it on. It can talk to multiple Acctivate databases. We can help you set that up. The cycle count plugin and the MRP plugin are both $300 each. So yes, I am asking for $800 if you want to just start with the cycle count today, but you are going to get all the functionality out of the Pro Data Export utility. Lastly, we could do custom stored procedures for you. We can also do custom queries, custom stored procedures. It has helped a lot of customers already by coming up with solutions that we couldn't come up with before. Simple write backs to the database or simple aggregations of data. I want to remind you to use the help at Acctivate.com. It is a great site. All of my team uses it for reference. And so this we've pointed out to a couple places today. It's a great place to go. And lastly, thank you for your time today. I'll stay on for a few minutes for questions. And you can also join, go to our website. We have other reports and utilities listed and their prices. You would go to fireflybusinessgroup.com, and then at the top, click on Customer Center, and then from that drop down, select Firefly Store. Lauren, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do actually. So the first question that came in was, does this work on a server that's not a dedicated server, such as Right Networks?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think not, but we'd have to talk to Right Networks because at one point in time they had to approve applications. They did call me one day and talk to me about going through some process to get the application approved. So I don't want to say no, but maybe we'd have to kind of work with Right Networks to see if it's something they would approve. It is not a server installed application. So if they understood how it worked, it's just something we put on the desktop and we talked to the SQL server, they could tell us quickly if it would work or not. So I don't have an exact answer, but that's what I got.
Okay. And then another question that came in is, does Firefly charge less for a query versus a report? Is the minimum charge different? Are there any price differences between queries and reports?
Well, we build up for our time by the quarter hour increment. So our time, if it takes me an hour to write the report or versus a quarter hour to write a query, then you're getting charged at the same rate, but you just paid for less time.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and then also, does the Firefly Pro include the cycle count plugin by default, or is that an add-on that you have for it?
That was an add-on.
And then do you have a list of stored procedures already generated that they may find useful?
Well, these are the only two that we sell. A couple examples, I'm trying to think. We helped a customer, it's a very unique situation, and we helped them copy sales orders out to a file. It was a very unique situation for them. And then we turned around and used sales order import to import it in. The stored procedure was to utilize a specific quantity of how many times they needed to copy it. Saves them a lot of time from doing it. Another situation we've used it in is we have auto-generated, based on requirements, the lot number for an assembly before it got posted. The two that come to mind, I think there's a third one that we've done. So we've done MRP, stored procedures, for other customers. It's been out for about a year, but this is the first public introduction of it to be used with the Pro data itself. I think people just come and talk to me and say, can you do this? And then my ideas start going to, oh, I think we could do that with a stored procedure. So run the idea by me and I'll let you know if we can do it or not.
Okay. And it looks like we've got one last question for the cycle count query. Does it create the count sheet to enter the count on, or does the user still have to create a count sheet?
The user still has to enter the count sheet. The only thing that it's doing is it's deciding what product you should be counting, but then it does go into Acctivate and mark the cycle count box with the CC letter. So when we went into Acctivate and we said we want to print our count sheets, what we told it is we want only the products with the CC, the cycle count indication. And then that limited the count sheet to just those products. So it's making the decision for you and it's updating the count cycle box on every item for you.
All right, that's all the questions we have. So we will go ahead and just wrap it up. Thank you for coming in and showing us this awesome utility that y'all have created, Michelle. It's always a pleasure.
All right, thank you so much for allowing me to host.
Yep, y'all have a great day.
All right, thanks, you too.
Thank you.